everyone! Welcome to the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. We've done this before. I should know this, shouldn't I?
Once or twice.
Once or twice. I think this is technically our 19th episode. Next one will be 20. So welcome, y'all. Thank you for hanging out. I'm Kay. I'm going to be your host. This is my amazing co-host, David.
Hi, David.
Before I ramble, because you know I'm able to. You have anything to promote, David?
No, I'm a shell, a husk of a man.
You've had a couple weeks of hard labor, so
Yes.
we could let that go. But you can find David here every Tuesday. I drag him on camera every Tuesday for the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. Coming up on the number one, he put out a call to anyone, and holy cats, amazing! I am so excited. We've got a whole bunch of amazing guests lined up. We're figuring out topics, timeline, that good stuff. But not this coming week, not the 19th, but the following week, the 26th, we are going to have the one, the only Carrie Smith on guest.
Very excited.
Carrie Smith 2012 on Tweetagrams. Yes, Twitter.
The Tweetagrams.
I stole that. It Walters. Carrie is amazing and does Deadlands the crossover on Call of Cthulhu and all sorts of amazing TTR, amazing performer, and I am so hyped to have her. Every other Wednesday, and find me on the Power Podcast, which not revealing too much.
Did someone have a spicy recording session?
I mean, been going through some times, yo. Season 3 has been a roller coaster. If you don't know, it's a Starfinder podcast. You don't have to know Starfinder, and you can actually and we actually all of this is in character stress. None of it is OOC. Amazing. But, yeah, we just recorded a session that was really stressful. I lost sleep for 2 Adam, who we...
Right.
I just finished up an Extra Life charity stream. Find over this channel. Mike is cutting in and out. Thank you so much for letting me. I think I know how to get hello. Right here. This should hopefully be a little bit better. Please let me know if that does not fix it. But yes, Emergency Power Podcast. Amazing story. I'm really loving it. I'm really loving playing my terrible character. Some really great plot stuff going down, and I hope you all will watch it and enjoy it because I love Soul and playing Soul so much. Newest episode will be coming on the 20th. Like I said, just finished the Extra Life charity stream. You can find that over on Gamermon Luna's channel. We did a charity stream for Extra Life, and we raised over $2,000. And I got to play Roxy, the paladin of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, who inhabits David's home game, for better or for worse.
Yes.
And I know I've got another charity game coming up soon. I have to remember when. Yo, my life is
might
amazing.
Be next month.
No, I think it's late this month. My life is amazing, and I get to do awesome stuff, but also... okay. Thursday the 28th, I am doing a Star Trek charity game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I may or may not be wearing a red shirt. But I will have more info on that coming soon. So, I'm sure you're wondering why I've gathered you all here today. Well, some people wanted to talk about putting custom stuff in your games. In other words, some folks want to wander away from these. And we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the awesome, and the ugly.
And don't be intimidated by the size of those books or the expense of those books. Those books don't have everything. There's tons of stuff that's not in those books that's cool that you can do.
And this is not even a half of my... There's a lot. There's a lot of books, and there's a ton of stuff that's not in the books. And I know what you're thinking. Well, actually, this is hopefully not what you're thinking. Because I have dealt with the people who think this, and they're not fun. But if it's not in the book, then it's not like official canon, and if it's not cool, you know how something new is added to a book? Someone who plays a lot of tabletop says, you know what would be cool? You know what would make this game better? And then they just happen to be a professional, and they play test it, and they try to balance it, and they say, this thing doesn't work well, we should change it this way. And they work it into the books, and it changes the canon. So, literally, everyone who makes these rules is a fan. It's all homebrew to some extent. Like, once upon a time, Matt Mercer said, I want drinking a potion to be a bonus action. And I literally, in another game, in a charity game, said, can we use Matt Mercer home rules? They're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, it's a bonus action, not a full action. They're like, oh, I've never played with it being
a full action.
Now, to be fair, I'm sure Matt Mercer is not the only GM who does that, but definitely popularized that idea.
And I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine about language. First we were talking about economics, and then it drifted into... The idea is this. So many things about our lives, we just make up. Words are all... Every word is a made-up word. Every single one. And D&D, for better or worse, is made up. So if you make up something that's cool and that fits with the things that other people have made up, great. And if it doesn't fit, then work on it until it does, or try something else.
I hate to tell you this, David, because I know this is going to just like rock your world and change your entire perspective on everything. But Pokemon are made up. We made those up. Those are not real.
I don't believe you. Somewhere there are Pokemon running around, acting a fool.
I mean, in my brain.
Yes.
So, David, what's something fun and made up and homebrew and custom that you've done that has brought you joy or misery? Because let's be fair, here's the thing. When you start making things up, it's easy for things to not be balanced.
Right.
And sometimes, especially as a GM, that can really bite you in the butt.
Yes.
But that's when it's good to have a good enough relationship with your players that you can say, hey, so you know how we agreed X? We gotta tweak it.
So a couple of things spring to mind, both from our home game. One is Roxy. Like, the homebrew stuff that I did for Roxy includes the idea of like, well, what/who is the flying spaghetti monster, if the flying spaghetti monster exists, because paladins can believe hard enough to just make magic happen. And so, like, you know, in our discussion, I went, oh, well, just Oath of the Ancients, that fits the character best. And I didn't look at it, and I didn't think about it on purpose. And so when you pipe up 2 sessions later with, hey, I can talk to spiders, I was like, yeah, I did that. But
Also,
that,
let me just be clear. I came into this and said, "Hey, David, I don't know. Like, I don't have a heart's desire of is this real or not. Uh, I don't want to know. You can decide, and I don't want to know the answer. I want to find it out in game." Not everyone plays that way. I have told people I don't know this, and they're like, "That's terrible." I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, no." So communication is really important. Like, if you, David and I have talked about potential characters for potential things, and I'm like, I want them to be the shadiest thing, like a warlock with a patron who no one trusts, and then you eventually find out that they've multiclassed into cleric, and the god is actually good at the end, but no one trusts the god the whole time. Like, have those conversations. If you want it to be shady but ultimately good, you need to tell your GM, or if you tell him I've got a shady god, he's probably going to be a shady god. If you're playing a shady god and you don't know or care if they're good or evil, different. Say that too.
Right.
Tell the GM if you have a desire, because a good GM, I can't say all GMs, a good GM will respect what you really want. Might put some twists and curveballs in it, but respect what you want.
And one of my gaming philosophies is don't go out of your way to prevent your players from shining. So, if you have a paladin that has turned undead, maybe some undead thing should show up so they can go, haha, I have something for this. If you have a monk that can like intercept and redirect missiles, then it's rude to never have an archer around.
You will break your monk's heart. If you want to be your monk's favorite GM, still shoot arrows at them after they get deflect missiles.
Right. And so, like, metagaming can really happen on both sides. Like, players can metagame, but also DMs can metagame. Like, a lot of DMs have specifically crafted encounters where they're like, well, we're going to pull out all these things because, the way this composition is, they'll just, like, roll right over them. And it's important for your players, especially as they grow more powerful, to have a moment where they're like, oh, there's a big separation between us as a group of adventurers and like the common riffraff. There's like you never want to be in a position where your first mission is to kill kobolds in a mine, and then 10 levels later they're fighting kobolds in a mine, but the kobolds are all like bigger and stronger and even paced with your players. And part of so there are a lot of things that go into that, including you want to give your players a time to shine, but then you also set up a question mark on encounters, because if you give them encounters where they could just steamroll, where they can just raffle stop whoever, they're going to be like, I feel great. But then if you put them in a situation where they're like, given the fights that we've had, some have been easy, some have been like in line with us, and some have been out of our reach, they're going to give a second thought before picking a fight with people and creatures that they meet, because you never know if this is the level 20 dragon in human shape that you're picking a fight with.
Also, keep in mind what B. Dave Walters has a saying that I love, which is intelligent creatures act intelligently. And David, you've touched on this many times when we've been in these chats about sometimes characters will run away. Sometimes, your NPCs should run. Would this character, would this animal, would this whatever actually stay and fight? And a lot of the times the answer is no. B. Dave says intelligent creatures should behave intelligently. So yes, if you do something very frightening, if they watch half of their pack get destroyed, probably gonna make sense they're gonna run. At the same time, a religious zealot who has completely dedicated their life is probably not going to run.
Yep.
But also keep in mind, as a GM, And if you as a GM make a mistake, here's your get out of jail free card, and I promise you it makes your players feel good. I had a GM, I won't say who. I'm in a lot of games right now, so I won't point any fingers. I had a GM be like, okay, this monster targets your character with this spell. And as you, and someone else is like, wait, because they knew my character was immune to that spell. I'm like, oh no, let him keep going. And they're like, no, but you, I'm like, oh no, let him keep going. Because sure enough, the GM went and described this energy surrounds and I'm like, cool, they can't do that. And the GM's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, and if you really want to force it, I can just do a thing, free action this turn, do a thing next turn, and it's all undone. And they're like, no, that's breaking the okay. And he's like, okay, but the monster wouldn't know that, so they're gonna cast that spell anyway.
Absolutely.
So if you do mess up, like, give your characters moments to be super cool, and if you mess up, cool, remember not to make that mistake again, but your player is going to feel so clever.
Right. And also, like, especially in situations like that, I think about the X-Men and how Havoc and Cyclops always end up in a slap fight. And some of the best moments in the X-Men comic books is when, like, Cyclops is like, pew, and Havoc is like, pew, and they're like, and then they're brothers fighting, like fist fighting, rolling on the ground, instead of these like huge super-powered heroes. And of course, because of their bond and the conflict between them, it's never like, hey Storm, I can't shoot this guy, go deal with him. It's like, no, everything else stops, I'm gonna deal with him.
I'm gonna smack this guy. Hey, Sauce! I can't wait until I can make a Sauce announcement on this show.
Right. But and like, you know, I had that moment with Roxy where everybody was like, okay, well, we need to be able to talk to animals, and Roxy wakes up from a nap and is like, I could do that. And it was one of those things where I purposely looked away, where I purposely didn't dig deep.
David's
and, like,
quadruple take, and then facepalm as he realized he was gonna have to talk like a spider and a horse, and
yeah,
I don't even know what else.
So much pain. So much pain. Oh God, that horse conversation. That still
so
haunts my nightmares.
You had another. You said Roxy was the first.
And the other is with Vita. And so we have a...
Okay, cool. I was going to say, for those who don't know,
we have a player who bases his characters off of food and cooking related things. And he has a dwarf fighter named Vita Mixer, who spins when he fights. He spins when he fights. And I was like, okay, fine, that's fine and dandy. But as I'm talking to him about it, I remember something. In The Witcher, especially when you played The Witcher 1, and you're really trying to get a hold of the mechanics, Geralt is just spinning like an idiot with his sword. And you're like, this is dumb. Who, in God's name, would fight with the sword? And so I had a friend who was taking longsword fencing. And so, like, you know, your more medieval style fencing. They'd dug up a bunch of training materials many years ago, and people just started teaching them. And so he takes a couple of classes. He and I have a bunch of conversations about it. And then he sends me down this YouTube rabbit hole. And turns out the way you're supposed to fight with a two-handed sword is the way Geralt fights. Because if you spin and you're swinging that thing around, no one could get close and hurt you.
That's how Garen is so annoying in League of Legends.
Right. And so the whole spinning thing, it stopped being a... Right. It stopped being a thing where it's like, this is a gimmick that we're putting into the game to fit with the theme of how hilarious this character is, and more of a how can we further incorporate real world practices into a fantasy game using the mechanics of the fantasy game. And we're still going back and forth about like the details of how that spinning system works, and how it upgrades and evolves over time as he gets more powerful.
And as
Um,
he custom commissions items.
right,
But we'll come back to homebrew items later.
right. Um, but it's been for people who GM, especially people who do tons of homebrew, who have homebrew worlds, we definitely get going down the rabbit hole about specific things. Like I remember trying to figure out the longitude range that certain types of trees live in, and whether they're evergreen or deciduous, so that I could describe what type of leaves the players were stepping on.
If
And
I'm,
some,
I'm gonna say it again. If you've not watched the Exandria Unlimited GM's Roundtable with Mercer, Abria, and Brennan, if you GM, it's like a call out and like a validation at the same time. Because Brennan's like, I'm like doing something, I'm making coffee, and then like I'm like, what if everything we know about gnomes are wrong? What if we've been doing gnomes wrong this whole time? And then I'm off, and then like 20 minutes later, my wife walks in, and I'm standing there with the fridge door open, a thing of half and half in my hand, just staring at nothing. She's like, "What you doing?"
but it adds a lot to your world, and it helps ground and anchor you as the sort of creator in the world that your players have to inhabit. And so when you go down the rabbit hole and you really get into those type of details, yes, you can not see the forest for the trees, but also it gives you a lot of depth and richness, which you can then communicate to your players. But to the original point, the custom mechanics of the spin to win fighting style, which
Hey, baby.
our character will be teaching to others, is one of those things where it's like, oh man, this was supposed to be like a dumb sort of throwaway thing, and has turned into this much bigger thing. And in addition to the fact that I'm glad that I can tie it to something real world, I'm also happy that it has added so much depth to the game, both for me and for the players.
And thank you for the follow, Ruby Shark Teeth. Welcome. So, when I think about mechanics, the big one that stands out to me, and I can't. We're working on making a thing happen. So I'm both excited and cautious to bring up Godplane again. But when we ran Godplane, I love 5e. I don't think it's a perfect system. I understand there's a lot of things it doesn't do that well, but I can generally make it work and customize things enough for what I want it to do. One of the things that we did in Godplane was we wanted to tell a horror story, and 5e doesn't always do horror that well.
Yep.
You can make it work, but it's definitely not.
It is thin on the emotional system side of things.
And one of the things we really wanted to make the players aware of while they were in the God plane was what stresses are on your characters. And so we created, and I'm not sure if this is the right word, if this is the best word, if you all have, we wanted a stability check. Some kind of system that would tell you, like, how well is your character coping with all of the stresses that we're actively throwing at them, because it's a horror game and I get to be terrible. I get to be a GM and I get to be terrible. And we didn't want it to just be like, because not everyone deals with stress and strain and all that the same way. So we wanted to give the players an option. So we did a physical, like, do you like grit your teeth? Are you digging your nails into your hands? Are you like pacing to walk it off? What are you can physically, you can roll that with a constitution, a physical fight through the stress and the strain. Or you could roll it with wisdom, with some kind of emotional. Do you meditate? Are you super internalizing this? And you would have to do these checks, and depending upon if you passed or failed, and if you did it physically, through physical means or through mental means, the results would impact you. So if you failed and you were powering through it, you've got a phantom pain now, and maybe you've got a limp. If you mentally pushed through it and you failed to push through it, like you're obsessing over something you can't get. And not one of the things I don't like, I have a weird paradox with rules light systems, and there are a lot. I've played a bunch of rules light systems, and I do enjoy a lot of them. But a lot of them I find like they're rules light in roles, but then they start assigning things to your character. This happened, so your character does X, and I'm like, I as a player don't like that, because I know my character better than your default textbook does. So that was my goals with the system we were building in Godplane, was, okay, you muscled through this, or you dug your fingernails into your palms to get through this physically, and you failed. So now, do you have a limp? Are your palms super sensitive and it's hard for you to grip something? Like, what's happening? First flavor, but the longer it goes on, if you keep failing rolls, it will start impacting you stronger. So the players can start building their character's own journey through this mental torture, emotional torture. We are mean in Godplane.
Yes. But one of the great aspects of that system is it gives you a road back as well. And so, the moments of success where you can claw your way back to that stability, where, let's say your phantom limp goes away, or the nausea that you're feeling taps down, then you have this tangible way for players to represent both going off the deep end, but then also stepping back from the precipice. And that adds a lot of both mechanical aspects for players, but also a lot of like character aspects for players as well.
I just watched, and I'm going to be on it again next month, which I'm really excited about. But if you've watched Tales from the Tavern, which is by Gamer Mom Luna's show, I got to guest on there for Mothership, going back for the Starfinder game. But she just interviewed B. Dave Walters, and homebrew was one of the things that came up. And almost everyone was like, yeah, I homebrew. And like, I've got some fun homebrew. My himbo bard, who is a problem, let me just be very clear. Himbo bard is a big problem. My GM she didn't even homebrew it. She found like it was an item that came with a pack that she downloaded, and she thought it would be a really cool thing. And it's a choker that lets my character just give max inspiration dice. You don't have to roll for the inspiration dice. You just, Kinley smiles upon you and you get a +8. And let me tell you, that's a problem.
Well, first, let's be clear, because I think it originally starts at like 1d4.
Yeah, but even at level 1, if you suddenly can add a +4 to any roll.
Right, but to sort of like extrapolate how much damage your GM did to themselves, starts at 1d4, and you're thinking, okay, 4, solid 4, not too bad, and then it goes up to a 1d6, and then it goes up to a 1d8. And so imagine you have like a DC 24 check, and the person who's doing is like, well, I have +3 in charisma, or I have +3 in this, and then Kinley slaps down a +8. That bumps that check down from 24 to 13, which in a lot of cases, easy peasy.
It kind of gets worse because Kinley has a +4 in charisma, is allowed to inspire himself, so that's a +12 right there, and may have some perks that means he can't roll below a 10.
Right. And so, like, you have an automatic 10 plus that is just you pass, and it would have infuriated me because in one of our previous sessions, I was like, okay, this has to be really hard. I'm gonna make it DC 24, and I think it was Roxy, but one of the players hit a 23, and so they're like yelling at me, and they're like, I got a 23. Why is it? And I'm like, DC's higher. That said, on the inside, I was like, grumble, grumble, grumble. They almost hit this.
Let me just say, it was a nat 20. That got me to a 23. And we realized far too late that I got an aura, so I did technically roll a 24, but we were so far past it, we weren't going to retcon that much of roleplay. Also, it was fun to just grumble and then move on. Like, I'm the person, I love to complain, not expecting anything to change. But, like, something happened and I want to be like, arr, 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 arr. And then later I'm like, I got to complain about that. That was bullshit that it didn't happen, right? Isn't it? I don't know. That's part of my love language. It's why I love when GMs are mean to me. It's half the reason I'm like, here's a character with all sorts of things in their backstory that you can use to hurt me. Because I want to be hurt and then I want to be like, I hate you, you're so mean.
But yeah, when it comes to custom systems, and so much of what we did and will do on Godplayed is really custom. Something I've talked about before, but something that is a great tip. There are many people you'll play with who are brand new. Great. I love new players. I love welcoming them in, and watching as their journey means that they get more and more into D&D. But there are lots of people you'll play with who are old hands, who have been playing for a year, 2 years, 5 years. And especially when you play right. And especially when you play with a lot of people who've played lots of characters who are under level 10, the enemies that you face start to look very similar. And so one of the things that you can do to throw these knowledgeable players a curveball, not even necessarily that they're trying to metagame, but I know that, like, I as a player have been like, okay, that's a slime, the stat block in a slime is this, so I need to do this, this, and this, and the vulnerability is blah blah blah. What you could do is reskin monsters. There are all sorts of different flavor things that you can do for monsters that will add depth and complexity to the game and throw a curveball to people who think they know what they have to expect. So, if they're fighting a bear and they're like, okay, the stat block of the bear I have in my head. What if the bear has rabies? What if the bear is diseased? What if someone built that bear? And it's like an unholy abomination. And so, a hunter or a druid who's like, that's an animal, I can control it. And then they try to touch that creature's mind, and there's lack of stability there, to go back to Godplane. And all of a sudden, they're going to be like, whoa, this is something new. I haven't dealt with this, and I'm not quite sure how to approach this. And that reinvigorates a lot of the game for old hand players, because if you throw something that looks like a zombie at a paladin and they turn undead and it doesn't go anywhere, everyone will panic.
And you're in good company with that thinking, because on Tales in the Tavern, B. Dave said, you know what? I've been playing too long. I've seen too many homebrews go bad. So I don't homebrew anything. I take existing stat blocks and reskin them. And if this thing had bludgeoning, but it's a werewolf, it's now got slashing. Manhattan is very loud. I apologize.
Yep.
So yeah, that was B. Dave's thing of like, nah, I'm not gonna I reskin. I don't homebrew. That's backfired on me too many times.
Right.
B. Dave also tends to do level 20 play.
Oh, and that's a mess. Ooh wee. A lot of fun, but there's so many moving parts. Like I've one of the rules that I used to have that I'm a lot easier about now is if you are a new player, like if you've only played one or two characters, then I won't let you play a caster, because there have been too many times where someone goes, okay, I cast magic missile, and I'm like, how many times have you cast magic missile? And they're like 7, and you're like, what level are you? 3. um Maybe you can't cast 7 magic, and they're like, but it's my spell, so it goes. And it's like, and there's a lot of
It's my spell,
housekeeping.
so it goes.
There's a lot of housekeeping with casters, and um I mean, it's why I'm not sure I've met somebody who makes ranged players keep track of their ammunition. And I'm sure someone out there does it. I'm not going to make you count your arrows. Like if 10 years from now someone says, "Hey, I'm not going to count my arrows," and I offer a complaint, clip this and show it to me. You don't have with me, you don't have to count your arrows. The things that go in your sling, specialty ammo is a different story, but your arrows, your crossbow bolts, you got them. You just got them.
If you make a point of you completely unload your quiver because you were having a bad day in the woods, and you go back to town, maybe I'm gonna ask, so did you buy more? Because you made a big deal about you emptied your thing and you flung your bow, and I'm gonna assume you went and picked up your bow. What, did you go hunt down every one of those arrows?
And there are also conversations about a lot of the game theory about the fights that players face is resource management. And so you don't fight, you don't set up encounters to hurt your players. You set up encounters to make your players expend their resources. And I really like the idea of sending out players on missions where the resource lines aren't stable. So, when you're in a city, or when you're in a town, or you're in proximity to a town, I'm not going to say, hey, how many rations do you have on you? And day 2 or 3 out from that, I'm not going to say, hey,
Youngles, thank you for the resub.
Jen,
you are so sweet.
And I'm not going to make you, 2 or 3 days out, I'm not going to make you keep track of your water and whatnot. But there will come a time when there are survival elements where it's like, if you've been out in the bush for 2 weeks, then that's going to be a different animal. And then that is when I'll say, okay, what's your food situation like? What's your water situation like? And the same thing with arrows and whatnot. Like, your quiver catches fire and you're holding 3 in your hand, well, then you got 3 arrows. But as a general rule, I don't like the nuts and bolts of resource management if it doesn't have a direct impact on the storytelling and the gameplay.
And look, y'all, I mentioned that this Emergency Power podcast is one of the most stressful things I've done, and it's because resource management, not equipment, resource management of a ticking clock with deaths plural on the other end, multiple battles, spell slots, stamina, and health point. Whew. Whew.
Yep. And when it's gone. I had a
Oh
point.
no, I interrupted and now it's gone.
Oh no, it was something about what you said in terms of like
Yeah,
resource management when deaths are on the line, but
yeah.
is gone.
I would assume it would be something about making. It's so easy when you're traveling to be like, oh, we're gonna take a long rest, and it's like, really? Can you? Should you? Is it safe? That's why Leomund's
But
tiny hut just ruins a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah, I don't like busy work when it comes to tabletop. Um, the one exception I will make to that is economies. So like medieval economies, really fascinating, whole lot of moving parts, and fantasy economies can have that same complexity. And so Kay hates when I do this, and it hasn't gotten as complicated as it will get, and so she's going to hate it even more.
My
But
character
instead
doesn't
of
handle the
doing
money.
copper, silver, and gold, there's the currency of the realm, and they're in a coastal trade town where all sorts of other currencies come through that town. And so at some point they're going to run into somebody and they're like, here's a sovereign, and they're going to be like, what is that in like bottle caps? I don't know. Um and then they're going to have to figure that out. And
Somebody else is gonna
while
have to figure that out. I'm not touching it.
right. And while some could say that some could argue that that's pedantic, and it's like, okay, well, you figure it out and you exchange it. There's a lot of interplay there that you would be snipping out, because what if the person that you're dealing with isn't all that honest? And if that person isn't all that honest and you have to do business with them in the future, or a plot point comes up where that person is a focal point of it, then that reads you into their character. And then you also have to figure out, how complex is this person? Is this a person who will take every opportunity to stab you in the back no matter what? Or is it a guy who will shave gold off the end of your coins and pocket the excess, but otherwise is a good guy? And conversely, so there's the systems in your game, whether they are core mechanics or um, custom homebrew stuff, should serve the development of the characters and serve the story, and all the mechanics should be in service to the game, not be a hamper uh, on gameplay.
Also, you're a little fuzzy. See if you can make your camera behave, because it's a jerk. Um, so yes, you don't have to add a ton of original thing. Like everything doesn't have to be homebrew, original, unique. Um, to make it feel alive and full and different and interesting, because sometimes even just having that one thing that's dramatically different makes everything out. Like I remember Roxy, she's an Oath of the Ancients paladin. I flavor all of her spells like the Flying Spaghetti Monster, but outside of that, mechanically, she's just an Oath of the Ancients paladin, except I have to roll a d20 whenever I do healing. And that just makes her feel so different from... I've played a couple different healers. I've played Roxy in a couple different one-shots, but Roxy in that world is different and unique. And I don't know the reason I have to roll that d20. So there's a mystery. There's more for me to uncover about my character, and that's really, really awesome.
Um, and so we when we've talked about storytelling before, we talk about how there's the main overall story, and then how each character has their own journey that they go on. And so I try to give each of my players something that is something that they have to discover about themselves. And it could be, you wake up one morning after many close shaves with death, and all of a sudden two spots on your head start itching, and then a couple days go by and you have a bump, and it's like, what is this? What's happening? Now it may end up being cat ears and a tail, but that's a whole different thing. You may discover a new god has taken interest in you, or you have a character where it's like, I'm a guy with a sword or I'm a guy with a stick, and they look around and everybody else is touched by some sort of grace, and so you ask yourself, what is my place in the world? Am I not like do I belong with these people who are who draw the attention of these powers? Because you go to Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Sokka just had his balls. Like, he had nothing else. And he picked a fight
Excuse
with
me,
everyone.
he had boomerang and space sword.
Right. But balls, mostly.
I
Because
cannot.
half the time the boomerang didn't go where it was supposed to.
If you are watching this, please invite me to an Avatar: The Last Airbender game. I want to play that system so badly. I have a copy of the PDF. I just don't have time to relearn it enough to run it, and I want to play a non-bender. I want to play a non-bender so much it hurts. I want to be that person who has so much to prove because they don't have power. Let me do it, please. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. I'm done. That's my pitch.
And and again, we've talked before of like a generic guy fighter, like a regular mercenary soldier, can have a really complex. And so again, if you are just a guy with a sword or a bow standing around these people who call down the power of the gods, one, how do you hang? And two, there are a lot of questions you have to ask yourself when it comes to your place. And then when the GM then gives you moments where it's like, these people and all their gods turn to you, then that is a big statement for you as a character. And so whether it be inventing a new cat god or digging into the guts of a brand new combat system or adding elements to your world specifically for your characters, there's a lot that you can do as a homebrew to add a lot of depth to the experiences that your players have.
And also it gives amazing roleplay opportunities. I'm totally going to steal because I don't know if anyone's watched the new Critical Role, but Orem is like a fighter. He's like, I come from the Ashari, so I can use a gust cantrip. That's all I got. Everything else, I'm just a fighter. So they do this whole thing, and they're breaking camp, and he's like, they're all talking and choosing spells and like doing their like, and he's like, I'm doing sit-ups. And then they continue talking, he's like, now I'm doing push-ups. And they continue talking, he's like, I'm doing burpees. And someone turns and goes, you're making us feel bad. He's like, this is all I got. You all have powers. This is all I got. And sometimes you want to do something different and unique and homebrewed just because you want to be a little weird. I don't know anything about wanting to be a little weird. I never want to do anything that's not off the beaten path. Like, so in a Ravnica game, I'm playing a homebrew plant person. I built my own vegetation genasi, and they're a grave domain cleric, and they have, like, flower petal eyes, and I got to figure out, like, okay, so can they photosynthesize? And if they can photosynthesize, if they're able to absorb sun and have access to good conditions, what does that give them? Because those of you who know me, I don't actually like to be OP. I like having lots of restrictions and figuring out how to use the system to do something really cool and unique, or even make the argument of, I know this system doesn't work this way, but hear me out. Tell me if this is cool enough for a rule of cool. I love playing within that and saying, like, in one of the games that David, I, and another person in this chat, maybe two people in this chat were in, was like, I want to play a character who used to be a demigod. GM's like, excuse me? What? I'm like, oh, no. I will never say I used to be a demigod, so I want these powers. I just want that as part of this character's backstory. It's like, okay, but you will, I know, I will never. I will not demand any of these things back. In fact, I will put a hindrance to my character for having done that. Like, just let me. My little Grave Domain Cleric, like, I specifically built them, but also knowing their history, like, I wanted them to be able to have blind sight, but only through the ground and only if there were plants. So they have to close their eyes and concentrate, and they can tap into the minds of all the plants and all the roots around them, and they get blind sight as far as their movement range, but only to things that are touching the ground or touching a branch. If something's flying or hovering, they can't feel it. At GM's discretion, they can maybe feel warmth or sunlight. And then I gave them fairy fire. So, you know, that's maybe a way to F my GM over. But it'll be really baller if we ever get into a fight where that's useful. I decided I want them to... They have root access level to the world, Rex! Brilliant first comment. Definitely have root access. When I figured out how I wanted them to photosynthesize, I said, okay, if they have, if they're able to get sun and they're in not adverse conditions, they can re-roll their hit dice during a short rest. With roll with advantage. And that's pretty awesome. And the GM can absolutely put me in situations where it doesn't work. And it lets me have fun and do something weird. And it leaves the rest of my... Because sometimes if you play with me, I don't always exactly tell you why or how I can do the thing that I'm doing. Because I really enjoy my party going, like, what, how, why, and leaving mysteries about my character for other people. If you play with me and you don't start asking questions about the weird things my character does, I will be a little bit sad, and also you won't know half the stuff about my character, because I plant seeds, and that's how I play.
Oh, that's a pun. But also, as a Grave Domain Cleric, how do you cast things?
So this is a wonderful moment in this. I had the discussion with my GM, because once we leveled up and I could cast, I think it was Bane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so GM, I'm a plant person. We had already discussed that I bleed milky white. Is that blood? And we went back and forth, and GM was like, just because I think it's funny? No, it's not.
Right.
And, you know, I could have gone the route. So you also all have to understand, my character was awake in this world before there was a city in Ravnica. So they have been dormant for over 2,000 years. Stuff has changed. They're a plant person to start with. They are learning common, because they speak a weird variation of primordial. And they're also just strange. They're a plant. They communicate with chemicals and pheromones, mostly. They get excited, and everyone has to make a constitution check to see if they sneeze.
Yep.
They have a best friend in this world, or not a... They consider this person a best friend. Best friend is like, this is a weird plant person that I'm going to experiment on. But also, I'm going to, like, take care of them. But mostly, I wouldn't have them here unless I were going to experiment on them and figure out what the heck. And when that character was knocked out during a fight, my character just went over and collected his blood. And the rest of the party watched this. No explanation.
Yep.
Just took the blood. And then started casting weird, dark spells. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's delightful. I will always enjoy when Mr. Near Demigod, monk, stickler for the rules, raced my new character's manservant up a mountain and dang near pitched a fit when he lost. How? It took a couple sessions then to learn my character's class. Dragon Archer. So, another reason to do homebrew items. And I'm going to say this. Any item you homebrew, be careful. Players are so creative, and you can build something you think is completely harmless, and they will use it against you. But Gamer Mama Luna has a homebrew item that is a cookie tin. And you open the cookie tin and you roll a D100. And it's probably going to be baked goods of some sort. Or a spell component. But there's a tiny chance that it might be sewing supplies. Or I might have it backwards. It might be mostly sewing supplies or spell components, and there's like a tiny chance that it's cookies. I think it's that way. It's a PDF that you can, I think it's like $1 to buy this item if you just want to put something. So something like that in a cozy game would be so cute and so clutch. You can do fun little things. My himbo bard, my GM, gave him a pet that is like a dragon fox that's like this big and so cute. And it doesn't do anything right now except entertain my himbo bard and cause fights between him and the paladin who doesn't like animals. But it's a delightful distraction. And we have debates about what do we do with the noodle and who does he sleep with, and it becomes a whole thing.
So it's funny that the bag of holding gets brought up
bring your mic in, we can hardly hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Better.
So the bag of holding in particular, because they're, in is it in the player's handbook? In one of the official things, there's the description of the bag of holding, and it's a lot more limiting than people who hear bag of holding think. But I homebrewed a bag of holding.
I'm so terrified. I'm so excited and so terrified.
I handed essentially a nuclear device to my players.
Extra
because
chuckle fuck group.
Right. So I've got a wizard who, if you play in my games, you may encounter as well, who he's a curious sort. He does a lot of experiments, and for a while he made magic items, including bags of holding. And so he gives the bag of holding. He's like, "Oh yeah, here you go. By the way, there's a bag of holding in the bag of holding. If you find it, let me know, because I got stuff in there that I need. But also, don't put another bag of holding in, and don't put a bag of holding in a bag of holding in a bag of holding." And they're like, "But why?" And he's like, "I'm betting, heat death of the universe." And everyone's eyes get big, and they're like, "Excuse me?
I mean,
how do you know this?"
To be fair, my eyes got big when he said there's a bag of holding inside the bag of holding, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know much about math, and even I know you don't multiply by 0. This is a problem.
Right.
David, are you aware of the even worse fuckery in the not bag of holding that Matt Mercer gave to his group of chuckle fucks in the current season of Critical Role?
No.
So, super minor season 3 spoilers about an item they receive. If you don't want to hear it, now's a good time to mute. We will give a thumbs up when we are done talking about any potential spoilers. But this is your warning, very minor potential spoilers. So, don't want to hear it? Mute. But it's funny. So, in season, in campaign 1, they had both a bag of holding and a bag of colding. Let that sink in.
Of course.
Season 2, I think they had 2. They had a big one and a smaller one. They didn't get a bag of holding so far. They got a piece of black cloth that's round, that when you lay it down, opens a 10-foot by 10-foot pocket dimension.
That's problematic. That is problematic.
They take it and they're like, what happens if we only open it a little? And they're like, what happens if someone's in there? So they have someone get in there and then they pick up the thing. And like they put stuff in there and then they pick up the thing and they shake it and then they put it on the ground and put something in there and they pick it up and they stick it on a wall to see what happens to the stuff inside. It's the most chaotic thing I've ever seen. We're done. Spoilers. Spoilers are done.
That sort of thing. Part of what makes homebrew stuff fun is the ways in which your players will sabotage you, the ways in which they will take it, run with it, and then do things that you never imagined. And it will happen to you. It will happen to you.
It will.
My advice: go with it, laugh at it, laugh at yourself if you need to, but go with it. But yeah, stuff like bags of holding and other sort of like, not just things that are like, oh man. Okay, so Kay and I are developing a lot of different things, and for 3 particular modules, including Godplane, we have like, I think it's like a 3 or 4 page document of just like ideas that we shot out for homebrew items, and our one of the many like deciding factors is how quickly we could come up with a way to break the game.
Yeah.
And at least 1 full page of items is like, these are never going into a game because there will be no game after.
Yeah. As Darkwing Duck would say, let's get dangerous. One of my favorite, I built a really cool thing for my player, and they absolutely betrayed me with it moments, is Campaign 2 of Critical Role. And look, I'd reference Black Die Society, but B-Dave doesn't homebrew, so I can't, this is the big homebrew one. Matt Mercer gives one of the characters a shield that when he takes damage, the shield will, like, exert force. And it'll do force damage if someone is within range, but if you're, like, underwater, it'll, like, push you, right? Because it'll push you that number of feet. So they're at sea. A fight starts. Character gets knocked overboard. He's, like, 30 feet underwater. Is drowning. Fight's raging so hard that no one else can get down there to help them. And then a thing happens. Someone is hanging like from a rope over the edge. Gets hit. And the player whose character is underwater and has the shield is like, can I take that damage?
Ooh.
And Mercer like does the math and he's like, yes, you're in range. You can take that damage. And he's like, cool. Then the shield reacts. And I shoot straight up. He's like, did you just ruin me with the homebrew item that I made?
Yep.
Even if you don't break the game, they'll still use the item to hurt you.
Yep. And there's there's so much fun in, like, you get a thing and then you figure out what you can do with it, and then you do entire episodes, entire sessions, both like in streamed games and in private games, have been devoted to, like you said in Critical Role, just like, we got this thing, let's test it. And just sitting there and dinking with it is a lot of fun. There are more items, both for upcoming games that we have and for our home game, that people will discover, and I'm really excited to just sit back and watch people have fun playing with them.
Even like not homebrew items, right? Your players will find a way to break things regardless. In this charity stream, there was an item that we had to get, without giving too much away in case you want to watch the Extra Life one I was in with Roxy, there was an item that we had to get high up somewhere. at a very dramatic, stressful time. And I remembered that very early on in that game, Roxy found a potion of giant strength. And that's why I was like, can it be a bonus action, please? So
Right.
I pop and chug this potion, which gives my big Goyle a +5 strength modifier. And I launch, we fastball special this character up to let him just dramatically change the tide of the battle. And it's amazing.
Oh, I remember. Remember the charity,
Remember, 5th of November.
right? The charity game, the Christmas one we did
Mm-hmm.
with your, was it
Holiday
a baby
Heistmas.
dragon?
Oh, yes! We did Mo, the peppermint dragon.
And completely so everything in that game was very homebrew, but the one thing that keeps haunting me, that I keep, like, 4 o'clock in the morning, I have to stop what I'm doing, go grab on my phone and yell at Kay in the middle of the night about,
It's happened more than once.
is this peppermint dragon that forgets everything but gives everybody a sugar rush when they breathe on someone. And its name is Mo because they
I
don't remember anything. They
I
live
don't
in
remember
the
a
Mo.
lot. I kind of live in the moment.
I hate it so much.
I'm Mo, the
It causes me so much
peppermint
pain.
dragon.
And
But I'm sorry,
it's something.
haste in a cone. He breathed
Right.
sugar breath and cast haste in a cone. It was I'm so happy with that. Sorry, continue.
It is a brilliant home. I don't want to call Mo an item. But it is. Yeah, it's a brilliant homebrew character NPC. Oh, this isn't working. Oh well.
Yeah.
But
We had so much fun. We had because my friend Alicia, love you Alicia, when I was talking, because Alicia doesn't play TTRPG. And this is the thing, if you're trying to come up with weird off the beaten path things, find a friend who's nerdy enough to be interested in the storytelling of TTRPGs but doesn't play themselves. Your friend will come up with things that you as a more seasoned person would never dream of. And I was telling her, I'm running a Christmas charity game. I want to have, and she's like, you should make a necromancer, except instead of raising the dead, it raises snowmen. It's a snowcromancer. And that took on a life of its own. We absolutely did that. And then we're like, what do we call? And I decided it couldn't just be a person who was raising snowmen. It had to be a snowman who was raising smaller snowmen. So what do you name a snowman? We went through a lot of names. We really did.
we did. And I think we settled on the most torturous name,
It was
but
the
there
only
were
name.
a lot of close second and thirds.
But in the end, Snowin Wilson was the only accurate name for that snowcromancer.
And then the little zombie snowmen were Snowman Wilsons. And I still hate it. I still hate it so much.
That one, you
But
hate it
again-
so much because that was you. I came up
Yeah.
with Snowin Wilson, and you're like, I'm gonna make it worse, and I hate myself for making it worse.
Mm-hmm. So, and again, it was a one shot. There wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to really, like Mo didn't break the game. There wasn't an opportunity for that. And then the Snowcromancer fight, luckily wasn't too taxing. But the longer your games go, especially if it's a home game, the more these things build up. and the more you get new weird interactions, and the more chaos happens.
So, as we are rambling, chat, do you have several of you have already shared stories with us, and we thank you. Do you have any favorite, like, homebrew items that were amazing or that broke the game? Or classes or things where you had to, it was great or it was terrible or it was anywhere in between? If you have it, please share. But yes, I am a big fan of, especially for shorter games, especially for letting your players have fun and be a little bit different. I'm a big fan of doing original things, trying out original mechanics, so long as we've all had the conversation of, I'm giving you this, we are trying this out, I reserve the right to take it away, or to retool it, or to respec it, or to dial this thing back. Like, let's try it out. If it's overpowered, we'll find out real quick.
There's one more homebrew item that I stole from a friend a very long time ago that is still the best idea for a homebrew item that I've ever had. And that is magical pocket lint.
Oh. Why did my
So you
camera just stop?
So you give your players magical pocket lint, and they put it in their pocket, and they forget about it. They will forget about it. One of two things will happen. Either they will try to use it at every opportunity, or it'll go in a pocket and they'll forget about it. Now, since its original manifestation, I have given it a lot more like storytelling purpose than what it originally had. But originally, it was an oh shit button. We were playing second edition. He had built a bunch of encounters, and I don't care who you are, I don't care how much experience you have, it's really tough to balance encounters. And the higher up in level the encounters are, the harder it is to balance them, because there's so many moving parts with all the different spells and everything. And so he basically gave us a whoops, I didn't mean for this to turn out this way button. And so he had something that at his discretion, like hand in the machine, could undo a fuck up on his part. So there were times where we ended up in combat encounters and it was just like, this is a bit much, and he's like, this wasn't meant to kill you. Or like, someone catches 3 crits in a row, and all of a sudden, boom, magical pocket lint goes off, and then something happens. It's not like immediately undone, but something happens to make it not as unfair as it was. And like I said, I've built on top of that, and there are some storytelling things now that I have loaded up that when it comes up for the players to use or to be notified of the pocket lint, I can add more story stuff to it. But usually when you make a homebrew item, it is for a player or for your players, so they can go nuts and do a cool thing. But I particularly like it because it's less of an item for them and more of an item for me to give me an in-world justification to right the ship if I sent it over a cliff.
I'll also say too, my GM for my Himbo Bard homebrewed an item for our Paladin, who Paladin has an interesting relation with their god, and no one in the party really wanted to talk to them about it. Not that it was like, oh no, I don't want to talk, but it was not a thing that was coming up, so she wasn't really getting to highlight it that much. So the GM sent her a magical talking weapon. And it's cool. It's a warhammer that talks to them and is kind of developing a personality based off of the actions of the paladin, and lets them have a moment to talk about what they're feeling without having to be like, I need to confide in so-and-so, because our party's really a mess. It's too many big personalities. It's wonderful. It's pure joy and pure chaos. However, was not prepared for the chaos that is someone on this call. And Himbo Bard may have decided that magical talking weapon might be a rival for the affections of said paladin.
Ooh-wee.
So suddenly, there's something of a personality conflict and war and jealousy going on between a Himbo Bard and an inanimate object.
Ooh-wee.
So, you never know
Ooh-wee.
how your characters
That's...
will destroy your, My captions I don't know what happened with my stuff. Let's try...
the gremlins have found us today.
The gremlins have found us today. Okay, it says it's listening, but these are not coming through. Why 4? Why 4? David, we had 2 awesome... Since I don't have captions, would you mind reading those 2 amazing homebrew items while I fight this battle?
Yes, Ribbon says, the one time I played D&D, we homebrewed sticks to snakes. Everyone in the setting knew the spell, so before our adventure, we went to a carpenter and got a bunch of sawdust, which we threw at people to make hundreds of tiny snakes. Now, 1, that's terrorism. 2...
I was gonna say that's some Godplane level.
Right! And 2, it really changes your perspective when you think about, like, pocket sand from King of the Hill. Because, like, you go from pocket sand to snakes. Yeah, I imagine there was a lot of hoo-wee.
Okay, maybe now.
And then Rex says, I have a player with a trident that can convert into a rapier, and it has slots like in Diablo for rings, modeled after the weapon wave. Player is going to encounter the intelligent part of it soon.
That is so daunting. That is such a scary statement. I love it.
Right? Right.
Well,
where it's like, by the way, you're going to discover something about what you got here.
I guess the good news is we are looking towards wrapping this up because apparently I just don't get captions anymore.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's being real grumpy. Well, let's try this. Let's try expire this now, just for giggles. I do have good news though. We can pay the cat tax.
Oh, excellent.
Say hello to Gilmore, everyone. This is the cat
God.
tax for tonight. He is getting so big, and he broke his frickin' bow tie collar. He lost one. He's now broken another. Say bye. All right. So, we have one more homebrew item I'm gonna make you talk about. That was, he's facing the window. When he turns around, I will boop the snoot. Tell us about the player requested, the player devised weapon that you are homebrewing into this game that are swords on a chain.
So, like I said, Vita is a blender. And so he's like, what if I could blend, but farther? And so we had to change the damage from short swords from piercing to slashing. And then he's like, I want to put them on a chain so I can spin. And as they spin, the blades go out farther. I was like, okay, we got to figure out a distance for that. And I was like, okay, you go from 5 feet to 10 feet. And I think later on, it'll be 15 feet, but then a knock to your chance to hit. And, you know, then there's like weight. He had to work with an artisan in order to build these things and had to wait for them. And I think in the last major, there he is.
Boop. I promised a boop.
And in the last major encounter, I think it was the first time he used them. At one point, he was spinning and trying to hit something with a sword on a chain, while also trying to hit something else with the sword in his hand, while also trying to pull back the weapon on the chain into his hand. There were a lot of moving parts to that, and it got silly and it got funny. And the more we dig into it, the more I'm happy we did it.
It's very fun. I'm really upset that my captions aren't working. I'm so sorry, y'all. But I will also say, even even the homebrew items that you don't sketch out are going to be used against you. Even the ones that don't have a sheet. In a game, and I'm not going to say which one, in a game, the party came across a place that had phosphorescent fruit. Like, there were fruit that was, like, glowing.
Oh.
And we had a big joke about, do we try to eat the fruit? LOL. Is it safe to eat? What does it look like? I was like, it's about the size of a grapefruit. And then one of the characters decided, I'm gonna take off the peel and throw a phosphorescent fruit at one of the things we're fighting. Does it make it easier to hit? Because it's glowing now.
That is an idea.
And
that is a very good idea.
GM had to make a decision on the spot of, is that allowed? I did kind of set myself up for it, but I think that's one of the things I appreciate about the tables that I'm lucky enough to play at. And I try to be this way too, is I'm like, I want to do this thing. You can tell me no. Hey, I have an idea. Will this work? I recognize this is a lot of BS. Can it work? You tell me.
And my favorite response to every single one of those harebrained ideas is, well, you could try.
My captions might be back. Yes! I figured it out. Sorry, y'all.
And there have been many times where it's like, well, you could try, and then something cool happened that both myself and the player didn't expect to happen. And it's like, okay, well, here we go. Let's go forward. Like, the whole spider thing, the whole I need to figure out how to, the whole talking to spider thing shattered a huge part of an important quest line that and then waking up and being like, by the way, I talk to spiders now. Like, just they were so it was a flippant throwaway line that one of my players took and just ran with, and it changed the entire face of the game.
Yeah. And I will say too, Rex says, as a DM, if it works the rule cool without getting a complete nonsense, I generally go with it. I will also sometimes throw something out about, okay, can I do this? And I've had a GM be like, that's really cool. I'm not letting it happen again. You get it this time because it was so clever, but I'm not, again, you can't make this a normal thing. And I am
don't count on this.
All about that. I am all about, you know what, you outsmarted me. 100% it's yours. It's like when I said I want my character to have been a demigod in the past and is no longer a demigod. I don't want any of the demigod powers. I have story, plot, narrative reasons to have this as their background. I don't need the powers that come with it. And I really enjoy being like, thing A, thing B, what happens if we do this?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that about covers what we set out to talk about tonight. If you all have any last-minute additional questions or awesome comments, there are some amazing homebrew things out there. I will pitch, we had Stephanie on in one of our first episodes as a guest, and she has an awesome thing on the DM's Guild, or is it Drive Thru RPG? One of the two. I think that announcement was made today. before I say anything more, let me Google a
Right.
news thing and see if it came out.
Yep.
Yes, so earlier today, it was announced Roll20 acquired the Dungeon Masters Guild and Drive-Thru RPG. So you're about
Wow.
to see a whole lot of homebrew content suddenly just be integrated into Roll20. And one of
Ooh.
those is the Druidic Guide by our dear friend Stephanie. And it is a really cool way of, like, if you have druids and they want to get super deep into their druidy stuff, there's whole languages of, like, how you can use insects or how a water-focused druid can communicate via waves, and what it's a really neat kind of primer on ways you can help your players add complexity if they want it. But there's a whole bunch of them, and who knows, maybe you'll see something by David and I there real soon too. I don't know if that would happen.
Yeah.
How could that be a thing?
Yeah. No, might be a. We'll see.
But I think that's what we have covered for today. I think the big takeaways are homebrew with caution, less caution, especially if it's a one-shot or a charity game, because you generally want things to go a little... Donations come in when things go a little bananas, so be a little bit more liberal there.
Little chaos is good.
Little chaos is very good. The longer your campaign is, the more difficult homebrew things can be. But your players will always find a way to use anything homebrew against you, but they'll also find a way to use anything not homebrew against you, so just
Right.
roll with it. David's thing to plug is this, right here. David,
Yes.
tell us about the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show.
Every Tuesday of every month, Kay and I are here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific, to talk about diversity and inclusion in tabletop RPGs, and also the mechanics of TTRPGs from our perspectives, whether it's world building, characters, players new and old. So come here to learn everything that you need to know about how to be cool in general, but also in TTRPGs. And you have a bunch of things to plug.
So, Emergency Power Podcast. Every other Wednesday. The most recent episode came out July 6th. The next one will be out July 20th. It's 3 seasons long. You can jump in at season 3. It's a Starfinder system. You don't have to know about Starfinder. We give recaps. It's all homebrew. It's all homebrew. My poor GM. I guess the classes aren't homebrew, but all of the adventures, half the items, it's a good, fun homebrew time. I play Soul, who's absolutely terrible, and have way too much fun playing my outer space tarot reading David Bowie gender fuck Solarian. And the Solarian is like an interstellar Jedi who hits things with a sword made of pure light.
Yes.
It's a good time. It's a good time. Coming up on the 28th, I am going to be on a Star Trek actual play for charity for reproductive rights. That's awesome. World sucks right now for everyone with a uterus and everyone who knows people with a uterus. So donate if you can. It's also really tough economic times for everyone. So if you can't, we totally understand. Anything you can do to boost, retweet, tune in, and drop your emotes so you count as an active follower would always be appreciated. And I've got more stuff coming up, but it's not announced yet. So I think that's actually all the stuff I have to plug right now. Chat, you've been amazing. If you have topics you would like to see us cover, please let us know. We have a Discord that you can hop into. We are both on Twitter. You can please @ us. We have a whole bunch of guests coming up soon. The next one being Carrie Smith on the 26th. That's the 6th. Yes, I had to look at a calendar very quickly. I've become something of a professional. I have my streaming schedule up for this part now, so I can just reference very quickly. As always, I'm Katie Amphier, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok. We are very close to getting our vanity URL on YouTube, so if you would like to follow, that would be amazing, and we thank you. Vivian, thank you for hanging out on the stream. Thank you, chat, for being awesome. You are always awesome. We're gonna hopefully, I think we need a spicy topic next week, David. I feel
Yeah,
like we
we'll
need a
we'll
hot
come up
take
with
or two.
something.
We'll come up with something. If you have a spicy topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. Thank you as always. I can't wait to see you next Tuesday. Y'all are amazing. Thank you to Bardly IO and I think 99.
Web capture.
And well, but there's the intro music. I have
Oh, yeah.
recorded it on the thing. Intro outro, I have it. Thank you for the music and web captioner for the captions. We appreciate you. We appreciate you, stream. I'm gonna flip us over to the end screen and find someone to raid. Have a really great week, y'all. And remember, be chaotic, but be good to each other. Bye.